welcome to the BoerBoel podcast, BoerBoel as it's in Swedish.
Thanks for having me.
It's really nice. You are the third member of the K9 Lab podcast now that joins this podcast. So it's awesome. Yeah. I didn't know about that podcast when I invited Emmanuel the first time, and then
we were talking about doing it for a while, and we just never got to getting it going. And then when we did start to get going, we actually recorded an episode and the audio was horrific, and then my camera was going in and out, so then we had to go buy stuff to do it the right way. So it took even longer, but we finally got to go.
It's that way all the time in the beginning. We called our podcast in the beginning the technical issue podcast because it was crazy. And
we did a whole episode, and when I went back and played it, I sounded like a robot. It was just cutting in and out the whole entire time, and I'm like, guys, we can't play that. And I'm like, we have to do the whole thing over again.
That's crazy.
It was bad.
But the first episode of the K9 Lab was amazing. It was
thank you,
a really good podcast. It shows that you guys know each other quite good.
Yeah. That's us every day on the phone. We're talking like this, like every day in and day out. And I'm like, guys, we should just put it on video. I'm like, this is us every day. I'm like, I'm sure people can get some information from our conversations every day in and day out. They're like, you know what, let's do it. So it's just us having conversations, man, about the sport that we love to do.
And that's the great part. That's the same beginning we had on this podcast. I had a co-host in the beginning, and him and I, we talked on the phone, hours a day. And after a couple of years, we said, let's record this because and we had the same issue. We recorded the first episode, I think 4 or 5 years ago in a studio. And that episode is gone. We have no idea where it is.
You have no idea where it went.
No.
That sounds like us.
And then we paused it for like a year and a half, and then we started.
Started again.
And so now this will be, I think, episode 98 or 99.
Wow.
Something like that. Yeah.
I'm going to go through and start listening to some of these guys. Yeah.
So we have, like, of those, let's say 98, it's 90 in Swedish. So it's a little bit, but all the episodes are on YouTube, and I'm working on getting subtitles from all of them. Yeah,
that's awesome.
But so I was It's a little bit tricky on English, so it took a couple of years before we had the guts to do it. But it's really nice, especially to talk with you guys that've been doing this for so long.
Is there a way? So can you switch the subtitles? Like if I wanted to have subtitles in Swedish, could I do that? Is there a way to go? See, now you're gonna have me go in there and do that for you guys. See?
So the thing that I have to add the subtitles in YouTube. So I'm all the new episodes I'm putting in like 5 to 6 different subtitles, and then sometimes I get requests from some country. It's someone interesting that we've interviewed. We interviewed this winter a couple of American Staffordshire Terrier breeders from the US. And then all of a sudden I got a request for subtitles in Chinese and stuff like that.
Wow. So, well, that's good. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Nice.
That's pretty nice.
It is, and it's really fun.
That's showing that people are listening and it's growing, so that's really good. That's awesome.
And we can get the word out about BoerBoel.
Absolutely.
Because I realized when I talked to Brian Hoswell that one of the reasons that BoerBoel isn't bigger is because it's hard. Do you agree?
It's hard in the beginning because it's the same, and I was the same mindset when I first started. It's my dog can pull on a leash, so it can pull, I'm gonna be fine. And then when you get into it, you're like, oh no, I'm not fine.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to be competitive, you start to realize, there's more to it than just throwing a harness on and just walking around or whatever. There's more to it than that. And then what makes it hard is then finding people that are actually willing to help you, and know what they're doing on top of that. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes you find someone that'll help you, but they're just as lost as you are, and then you're trying to figure it out together, which isn't a bad thing, but sometimes you start to develop bad habits and stuff like that, and there's nobody there to check that and say, hey, you may not want to do that,
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. And it's always easier to listen to the ones that have the golden nugget, so to speak, and the fast way. But yeah. And when you've been doing it a while, you realize to get into that top tier, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. I call it the 1%.
Yeah.
I call it that 1% of pullers that are just at the pinnacle. When you see them, you're in for a long day. They're hard to beat. It's not going to be easy. And it's like a 1% of weight pullers that are up there. And to get to that, it's a lot of work for sure. Yeah. It's a lot of work. It's work, but you can simplify it, and I look at it now, you can make it a little simpler, but to get to that point that now mentally you can make it simpler, you got to go through a lot of dogs. And when I say, you're training a lot of different dogs, you're messing up a lot. And then you're realizing, oh, okay, there's an easier way to do certain things, but it takes experience and then hopefully somebody to help you with it. That's what I've noticed anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we skipped the, quite important part. Can you introduce yourself for the listeners? Yeah.
Well, I'm Eli from Boer Boel. I'm one half of it. The other half is my wife. I can't do this without her. But yeah, and I've been pulling since 1999 is when I first started doing this. And boy, I messed up some dogs on the way. And when I say messed up, I'm mentally, the mental, because, I like to say like weight pulling is probably, 75 to 80% mental, and then the rest is physical. And the mental part is so important. I got into it by about 99 and it's been a crazy road ever since. I had my own particular like weight pull bloodline for a while. And then I got into other different breeds for the fun of it. Was one of the first people to pull a Chihuahua competitively,
Nice.
And that went pretty wild when I did that. And we've done that. I've done bull terriers. And even now, I've had mixed breeds that I've done it with as well. And now we're into the South African Mastiff, the Boer Boel.
Yeah.
Kind of got out of the American Pit Bull Terrier just because we got a farm and the Pit Bull just wasn't fitting the lifestyle. I'll always have an American Pit Bull Terrier, and that's really like the breed of choice, especially for weight pull. Like there's nothing that compares to it. But the Boer Boel was what we needed for the farm, and and one day I'm out here, playing around with one, and I'm like, man, these guys are just ungodly strong for no reason at all. Like the strength that they have shouldn't be possible,
Exactly. Yeah.
And my wife's like, well, why don't you throw one in a harness and let's just give it a shot and see what's up. And that's what we've been doing. We've just been having fun with it now with the Boer Boel.
Yeah, that's nice. And it must be a big difference in how you train a Boer Boel compared to a pit bull.
Yeah. I see some differences, and I approach it very similarly, but I also have to like remind myself it's not an American Pit Bull Terrier. So there's certain things that I probably wouldn't let a pit bull do that I can let the Boer Boel get away with, because the mental fortitude is a little different, right? The American Pit Bull Terrier, like the mental fortitude of that dog is just like no other breed. Where the Boer Boel, it might be a little bit more sensitive to some of that pressure because, they're not bred for that sport. So like the pit bull at this point now, you can find weight pulling lines that have been bred for generations now for pulling, and you can see it in the way that they carry themselves, the way they handle the pressure of moving, the amounts of weight and hanging out and being able to sit on that track and dig and dig and dig, where, I firmly believe a lot of that's genetic as well. A lot of that is being bred now specifically for that. And you can see it in the lines when winners to winners to winners to winners. You see that. The Boer Boel has none of that. It's a clean slate. You're starting from rock bottom and you're just picking out dogs based on the knowledge that we already have. So you kind of look for certain little cues like that, and you kind of approach it from that aspect. But it's definitely a little bit different, for sure. Yeah. I find myself, and everybody knows that, anybody that's talked to me knows I'm not a big component of starting puppies early. I never really have been. But now I find myself with the Boer Boel wanting to start certain things a little earlier just because of the sheer size of them. Yeah. We have a 5-month-old puppy. She's almost 80 pounds now. And it's like getting them to do certain things where you're trying to adjust them to stand a certain way. Doing it now is probably more beneficial than waiting till the dog is 120 pounds and standing there like, you're not moving me this way. I'm going this way, Yeah. And so I find myself now going, okay, I'm probably going to start doing certain exercises, putting the harness on a certain way and getting you to stand and start teaching you that earlier, where normally I like to wait till later on. I like to do it all in one shot. Some of the guys, they do that early with their puppies. I like to just do that all in one shot. I like to just start and then go right into pulling. Where now I find myself going, I probably might start these guys a little bit earlier than I probably would, just because they're harder to handle when they're bigger. So I'll just do it when they're smaller. Yeah.
Yeah, and they can be really big. We have had I'm not really sure, somewhere around 8 to 10 Boer Boels that have been pulling here in Scandinavia.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. So the most weight pulled ever in the organization is a Boer Boel from Sweden. Yeah. So
and how much was that?
That was like a little bit more than 9,000 pounds, something like that. Yeah. On a 1% incline.
Yeah. That's nice.
Yeah, that record almost got broke yesterday. No, today, actually. I'm sorry. Yeah, today. It was a competition in Norway.
Okay.
And it's a great Swisser Hound or something like that. Like a Senna, Bernard Senna, but a Swiss version of it that pulled 45 kilos less only. So that's 100 pounds.
Yeah.
And they didn't know the record, so they didn't continue afterwards.
If they would have known the record, they might have tried a little more. Yeah.
And that was on dirt, on wheels also. So it was really
on wheels
impressive.
too. That's
nice.
Yeah. Nice.
So, but it's the Boer Boels could be really big dogs. The biggest one I've seen doing weight pull, it was around 80 kilos. So that's pretty much 190 pounds, I think. Something like that.
Yeah, 180, 190,
200.
Like yeah. Wow, so, that's a big dog. Yeah.
That's a big dog. Yeah. So how big are your dogs? No?
The biggest one that we have right now is Mr. Wednesday, and he hits 180. He's like right there. He goes like 179 sometimes. Sometimes he's like 182. On average, he's 180 pounds. And he's about 29 inches at the shoulder. So he's a pretty tall, big, long dog. Mr. Wednesday and Sun Wukong, the one I'm pulling a lot now, they're littermate brothers. And then Sun is just probably, I keep him at about 160, 170-ish. We float around there. I don't like them to get much heavier than that. I mean, if they do naturally, it just is what it is, right? Because they carry a lot more bone density. But, they move better. Like Sun moves better at 160, 170. If I let him go, he'll probably, he can get more. I just don't like the way he moves at that higher weight. So.
Yeah. And and do you notice that they are naturally strong from the beginning?
Yeah, from the beginning. From the beginning, it's a strength that's hard to describe with any other breed. And I've dealt with other massive breeds. I've dealt with the Cane Corso, the Doberman, Rottweilers. I've helped train some of those guys, and the strength of the Boer Boel just feels different. And at an early age too, at a very, very early age, it's almost unnatural. Like, why is this dog this strong at this early of an age? You know what I mean? It's like, whoa. The puppy that we have now, her name is Conquest, and I will tell you, I haven't felt a puppy this strong in years. If she keeps going the way she's going, we might do some amazing things with this dog. If her mental fortitude is anything like her uncle's, man, she is going to go somewhere far, because the strength is just, it's a 5-month-old puppy, and if she goes one way, you're going with it. And I weigh 247 pounds, and I'm like, oh, why? And I sit there in amazement, and I'm like, why are you this strong? Like, you shouldn't be this strong, but they are, and I don't understand it.
No,
but we'll see if we get something out of it.
Yeah, they have the frame to be strong.
They have the frame. Yeah, they have the frame. And especially if they have the correct angles on it, they have a nice angulation of croup and nice angulation in the rear, you can just, they just power through everything that they do, whether they're not, I don't know if they're ever going to have, the mental fortitude close to the American Pit Bull Terrier. That's a whole nother, but power wise, man, it's up there. It's up there. If you can get the mentality there along with that power, whoa, it's a game changer. It's a game changer. And I hope more people with some of these big dogs come back around and start doing it, because we're losing the big dogs in the sport, at least here in America. We don't see as many as we used to. 20 years ago, the big dogs were a big thing. There was a lot of dogs that we call like Chevy Red Dog and Whopper dogs, and they call them I think they call them working pit bull dogs now is what they call them. And there was a lot of them, but now they just kind of died off over the years. And there isn't as many big dogs, but you're starting to see a slow, comeback of some of the big dogs, which I think would be pretty cool. I think there's somebody in Texas that's been pulling like presses, and they've been doing pretty well. And it's cool to see that. It's cool to see the big dogs coming slowly back around.
Yeah, I really hope they do. It's the same over here. We only have lightweight class and then heavyweight. So lightweight is up to 30 kilos, and that's 60, 75 pounds.
70 something. Yeah.
And then over that, but so in a show where if it's 50 dogs, it's like 40, 45 in the lightweight,
in the lightweight,
5 to 10 in the heavyweight. Yeah. So, but it's something else to see the big dogs pull. They don't pull the same percentages, but it's something else. The sound is different. Yeah. And it's
definitely. I don't think they're ever going to get the percentage wise, anywhere close. I just don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible. But the numbers for the weight there are pretty impressive.
Yeah. And it's we only do incline when we do the rail system, but mostly are on dirt with wheels. But the record in the heavyweight class over here is 100 times the body weight, and that was Alaskan Malamute. So
there used to be a lot of Alaskan Malamutes like that here too. There was a guy, Todd Sheen, I believe it was, and he had a lot of Malamutes, and he did pretty well. We just don't see them as much anymore. No. We don't see them as much.
Why do you think that is?
I think the sport in general kind of it shifts sometimes. Like throughout the years, we've seen the big dogs, were really popular, and you saw a lot of Malamutes, a lot of American like working pit bull dogs, which they call Whopper dogs, and dagger dogs is what they call them over here. We saw like a big influx of them, and then that kind of slowly died off, and then all of a sudden the little dogs came back, and the little dogs became real popular. And then all of a sudden you started seeing little 25-pound pit bulls, you started seeing little 30 pounds, and then that class got real popular again. And then it kind of comes in waves. I think the big dogs are slowly starting to come back around, but who knows? I honestly don't know, But I will say that for a little bit there, the ADBA, which is, the American Dog Breeders Association, they took away most weight pulled. That really stifled the big dog class, because then there was no incentive to have a large dog there, because you're, a 120-pound dog, you're not taking percentage from a 50-pound pit bull. Like, it's just not going to happen. If it does, it's a rarity, or the competition wasn't quite as strong as it should have been. It's one of those things. But a good 50-pound American Pit Bull Terrier and a good 120-pound, Pit Bull or mix or whatever it is, it's going to have a hell of a time trying to get percentage from a really good 50-pound. It's just not going to happen.
No, that's true. Yeah. And
the gap is too big.
Yeah. And you have physics against you. If it's the same track and everything is perfect for the big dog, it's even better for the smaller dogs. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The friction is even more, it's better. And the better you do the track for the big dogs, the higher percentages the small dogs will get.
For the little dogs. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happens. Yeah, that's exactly what happens. Yeah. Yeah. You look at that one Bully Max show we went to with Emmanuel was there and all that, and you saw his dog. I mean, which I think it was like 200% or something, or a body weight, something ridiculous. You know what I mean? The track allowed that, right? And the higher the numbers got, if you got a really good little dog, man, the percentage is just going to go through the roof. That big dog has no chance. I don't care how well, I don't care who the trainer is. It's just a known fact. You just, the amount of weight to have to get to a little 40-pound dog to take percentage from, like a 160-pound dog, it's ungodly. It's unprecedented. It's never going to happen.
No, that's an impossible task to
it is.
get over.
It is.
But that Bully Max show, I looked at a YouTube video a couple of days ago, and that was amazing. And I talked a little bit with Emmanuel about that as well. And it feels like maybe the best venue ever. Or
I think in all the years I've been doing this, I've never seen a venue for weight pool and just the sport in general, like the wall climb, the treadmill race that they had going on. You walk into the place, they had like turf floors, they had DJ on the go, and they got the lights going on, fog machine is going. You're like, what is this, a nightclub for dogs? Like, what is going on over here? It was great. And it's really cool to see a company take the initiative to do something like that, especially for a sport that I like to say teeters on the underground. It's not very mainstream, right? It's not like, over here at Thanksgiving, you turn the TV on and you're watching dogs doing rally and going over the cones, and you can see dock diving on television. You're not going to see weight pulling on television. Many years ago, a couple times it did come out on TV.
Oh, it did?
Yes. If I find the old television, I know there's some people that still have them. I'll send them to you. You're going to be amazed. It came out on TV a couple times. There was even a commercial once. They had Chevy Red Dog on a commercial for Ford, I believe it was.
Awesome.
A long time ago. But you don't see that anymore, and you're probably not going to see it anytime soon. But I think venues like Bully Max, that's going to help push it forward, for sure.
Yeah, it needs to be that professional. However we do it, I know I've done my part and tried to do it better and better with better live streams. And I saw in Lithuania yesterday, they had a really, really good live stream, but it's still, it costs a lot of money to make it really, really presentable.
It does. And I think this is a good topic, because I think a lot of the people that have been doing this for a while, as well, I think they have a responsibility to try to present it as professional as possible, right? And I think that's sometimes what I feel holds the sport back. I have a saying, I tell people all the time, keep training at home. When you're at an event and the dog does something wrong, and sometimes some people want to do a correction on the track, and it's like, hey, there's people here. There's, you're being recorded. There's cameras everywhere. I'm not saying you're going to go home and do something, dumb, but you're in a professional environment now. Act accordingly, and I think that's going to help if we can keep presenting it in a professional manner, and keep the training at home, and just, hey, look, the dog didn't do it. Okay, okay, I'm done, and I think it's just going to present itself better. I think it's all about the presentation, and if handlers and trainers can start presenting it more professionally, I think then we have an opportunity to start making it more mainstream.
Yeah, I agree totally. I think it's a great sport to look at on TV or and streaming services in nowadays. The hardest part is to follow along with, because it's percentages all the time, and the dogs differ in weight, and it's hard to know, was that the winning pull or
what's going on, what's happening, who won their class.
But if we can fix that, this is a sport for the viewers. I think this could be a really, really good TV sport in that sense.
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll be really entertaining, you know, when people, and Bully Max did a really good job of like presenting it that way. You know, they broke it down, whose dog was what they were doing, who won what, why, you know, introduced like the dog and the handler, you know, kind of, and kind of gave it more of a personal feel. So you had a connection to who was on there. They did a fantastic job with that. I mean, if they keep doing stuff like that, we might have an opportunity there to make it expand for sure.
Yeah. I think that's the way they did it. It's nobody have ever done it that good before.
Nobody.
It's amazing. It's amazing video. And the track was something else. I've never seen that type of rail track before.
No, it's really wide. I forget how wide it was. I think it might have been like 6 feet wide or 8 feet wide. The casters were enormous. I mean, the casters on the car, but it made sense to me now why it was so wide. I actually like it now because the weight, you know, when the weight started getting really heavy, it wasn't super high. You know, it's still, you know, you could see the layers that were stacked, but it wasn't all the way like up to the ceiling, you know. And I think that's sometimes what happens when you start getting this weight so high, it starts to look dangerous. You know, if you don't know the sport and you're not familiar with it, and I think that's what happens to people that are in the sport a lot of times. What we think is normal, and we just see it every day. The rest of society is like, "What the hell's going on?
Exactly.
Why are they doing that? Look at the size of that; it's going to fall on the dog." You know what I mean? And we're like, "No, this is what happens all the time. What are you talking about?" Relax, you know. But we have to start accepting that that's how the rest of the world looks at it, right? So that track being that wide, at first I was like, man, why is it so wide? But then when the weight got heavy and it wasn't super high and it didn't look super dangerous, I was like, oh, okay, I like this now. I like this. Because we had a dog, I think it was back in 2012. We had an American Pit Bull Terrier, and he set the UKC world record. And it was 12,176 pounds. And there's a video on it on YouTube. It's up there. And the weight was so incredibly high, they had to get 6-foot ladders and climb up the ladder to put the bricks on top of it. And then they had to saran wrap the whole entire thing to make sure that nothing would shift. While you're doing it, you're like, yeah. But then when you go back and you look at the videos, you're like, man, that looks sketchy.
Of course.
You're like, well, if something happens and that shifts, you know, and then you say to yourself, well, the rest of the world probably looks at that and probably says the same thing. Well, whoa, wait a minute, that looks dangerous. What if that falls on the dog, falls on a handler? You know what I mean? So while the numbers are cool, you know, and they you know, they show the work ethic that you put into it, I think the rest of the world is looking at it like, what are you guys doing? You know, and that cart that Bully Mac has, with it so wide like that, didn't allow it to get so incredibly high, but still allowed you to pull a good amount of weight. And I'm like, oh, I think you're onto something there. I think they're onto something.
Yeah, that's true. The casters, how big were they, do you think, in diameter?
Man, those things, you know what? They have a show coming up in September, and I'm going to it. I'm going to go measure them. I'm going to measure them, and I'm going to take pictures and measurements, and I'm going to send it to you. But they were big. I mean, the casters had to be, man, close to a foot. Like, they were really, really big casters. They were up off the ground. I mean, like, it was real heavy duty. And like, at first it took me off guard. Like, wow, I've never seen it like that. I wonder how this is going to move, but it moved fantastic. It moved really smooth. It moved great. I was a believer after competing on it, for sure. You know, it's not a track that's going to get up and get moved anywhere, though.
No,
that's definitely not going to happen. It's
stationary.
It stays there, and that's it. Where you put it at, it's done. It's not moving.
Yeah, and it was totally leveled as well.
Totally level. Yeah. It felt totally level.
Yeah,
it felt it. If they had it in an incline, I don't know, but I don't think you know. For how smooth it was running and the amount of weight that we got, I'm going to say it was more level. I didn't ask them if it was on an incline. I will, though, when we see them in September. I'm going to ask them.
Great. And did you feel any different with those big casters on?
No. I mean, yes. It felt smoother.
Yeah.
It felt smoother. You know, as long as the dog had the intention to move forward, it was going to move forward. Yeah. You know, so you were going to get the most out of your dog at that show. If your dog, so it was going to stop because the dog just physically cannot move it anymore, not because the track binded up, not because it was a rough spot or, that type of thing. As long as the dog was going to keep trying, it allowed your dog to get 100% of what it was going to give you at that particular moment. So I want to say it felt different in a good way. Actually, it felt really, really smooth. It was a really, really smooth track. Probably one of the smoothest I've ever pulled on.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, I remember we did a rule change over here. It's like 2015 or something with the maximum height of the wheels on the dirt wheels, and that made it was easier to get the hold of those wheels because we could use car wheels instead of special other kind of wheels, and that made all the results a lot better. And I'm not sure about the physics, but it feels like if the wheel's a little bit bigger, it might be a little bit harder to get it moving. But once it's moving easier.
Yeah.
So
I think that was kind of almost the same thing at Bully Max. It was one of those deals. Yep. Yeah. But once you got it moving, it was going to come moving smooth, and the dog was either going to get it done or was just going to gas out because it just didn't have any more to keep that amount of weight moving, which I'm okay with, It sucks when you travel across the country and you go somewhere and then the equipment doesn't match the effort that you put in to get ready for that show.
Yeah.
That's another thing, because that's out of your hands, right? You can do all the training you want, you can prepare all you want, and then you get somewhere and then the equipment doesn't match the amount of effort that I put in for the last 8 weeks to get ready for this, and then that's disappointing, that was definitely a good thing. When you get there, you go, okay, this is a show that I can prepare for. And I feel that it's worth preparing for, that I'm not going to get here and go, man, the equipment is breaking down, halfway through the show, and the cart's binding up and there's all these rough spots everywhere. And you lose or you win because of a binding in the track, and you really didn't get to see where the competition was at and where you were at, if that's your mindset, where at a track like Bully Max's, that didn't come in the factor at all.
No, that's at least over here we can see that the tracks where the track is good, especially when it comes to the dirt tracks. It's those are specially made, so they are. Some of them are super good, and you can see on the registrations before the competitions that it's a lot of dogs that goes to those shows.
Yeah.
And also the shows where we have the rails over here, they're always the bigger shows. Because everybody knows they can do good percentages.
That makes sense.
As soon as it's a rail track. We have had a couple of incidents where it's blue sand over the track and into the wheels, and then the rail track is quite heavy to pull on.
There's a show here in New Jersey. It's called the Tri-State American Pit Bull Show, and this has been going on for years. Chico does an amazing event over there every year. But many years ago, the rail track that they had was just rails that were dug into the sand. Like it was just like a sand pit, and it was just rails with a track. So it was rails on dirt. And you literally had two things. You had to hope that when your dog is coming down the track that it didn't spit up sand and fall in because the rail track was like the ones that had like a little scoop in it.
So
it wasn't like the actual, like the ones that come to a point like that. They had like a scoop, and you had to hope that your dog didn't accidentally kick dirt, because you could hear it and it would just start to slow the track down. So in between pools, everybody had to sweep. You had to sweep the track out. But in the middle of the pool, if that happens, that's it. I mean, it just is what it is. And that would happen all the time. That would happen all the time. You'd have a dog, and you're like, oh, I'm winning this, and then all of a sudden, a pebble would fall in there, and it would just come to a screeching halt, and you're like, what am I gonna do? Because if that was your foul, you're done.
The traction for the dog would be amazing with the dirt in the middle, but as you said, all of a sudden it's a break on the cart. Awesome. But can you see a difference in how many dogs that are on the show when it comes to what type of track it is, or how
absolutely.
good the track is.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're going to see more people show up to a show that has better equipment, and people know that it's a better equipment, versus, somewhere where, the equipment has a reputation for not being so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which makes sense. I mean, who wants to travel, 9 hours, 10 hours, 6 hours to go somewhere, and you're like, I'm only going to pull twice or something, or the track's going to bind up really early. So, I mean, like anything, so it makes sense, but you definitely can see the difference on the equipment and who shows up and what.
Yeah. I can imagine. When it comes to that, how many shows a year have you done typically?
Well, not with the Boer Boel, I not so many, but before I had children and a farm and everything else to attend to, me and my wife were going to shows sometimes 3 times a month.
Yeah.
Because at that particular time, 15, 20 years ago, like ADBA, was where to go. Then another organization called AADR was having weight pull events, and that was big on the East Coast, which is another pit bull organization. UKC at the time didn't have the restrictions that they do now, so that was actually a really big shows to go to. Then you had APA, then you had IWPA, and so you can just go to as many shows as you really wanted to, and when we didn't have children and responsibilities, we were like little kids, and we would just hop in the car and we would just go. And sometimes 3 times a month we would go to shows because, okay, this organization, okay, that organization, or you knew that a specific person was going to be at this organization. So I want to go compete against them. So we're like, all right, well, that's just, we're going to go to that one too and go compete. And so I think like 3 times a month was probably like the max, because that's hard on a dog that you have to cut weight on, so, when you have little dogs and you got to cut, I wouldn't worry about that with these guys. I got a 170-pound dog. I bring him down to, 155. Ooh, it's not going to make much of a difference. I'm still not going to get percentage. It's not going to happen.
Exactly.
But when you got a 40-pound dog and you can bring it down to 34 pounds or something like that, then depending on the dog's height and weight, now that plays a big factor. Your conditioning comes into play, your training comes into play, and the biggest thing is rest. The rest comes into play. Know how much rest to give in between. Some people just don't give enough rest. And then if you're going to show like that, you got to be picky where to make sure you don't overwork a dog and make sure you give it enough rest. So that was hard. That was a hard thing to do. But we had nothing else going on. So that for us, it was, that's all we did all the time. Now I can't do that
No. And I can imagine with a really good pit bull, they want to pull all the time. So you really need to be the one that, shows
and
when
it's like any sport. You start to do well, you get a target on your back, right? And then everybody's like, I want to beat them. I want to beat that dog, and you can't be in that top tier and not think that you're not a walking target, even with your own friends, me and Emmanuel joke around and Jonathan and our conversations, you'd be like, these people don't like each other. No, it's just all friendly, because it's just competition, right? And you want to compete against the best people and you want to test your training and test your knowledge. And the only way to do that is to compete against, good trainers and good dog. And once you start winning like that, you become a target, and it is what it is. And so you have to be on your A game. You have to be on your A game because everybody's coming, and if they're not coming for you, then you're trying to get to somebody else. And then, it's just a cycle like that, and it just is what it is, but it's fun. It's what makes it fun.
Yeah. I totally agree. It's the pursuit of winning in my case as well. And even if I'm not the one that's winning, then I want to compete against the best, and I want to compare what I had against them. For sure.
It's the only way to see and test what your knowledge is and if your training is paying off. Even if the way I looked at it was, even if I didn't win, how close was I there? Do I see improvement? Am I right there? Is it a training thing, or is it just the dog is just maxed out and that's where it's at? But the only way to do that is to find those good people and go compete against them and see where you're at. So that's how that was. And that was a fun time doing it like that. Children just don't allow me to do that anymore.
No, they have a way of occupying your time and your space.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So when it comes to success, what would you say is your biggest success in weight pulling?
Honestly, and somebody asked me something real similar to this. I want to say a couple of weeks ago. And I think for me, the biggest success for me was actually training the Chihuahua, was taking a 7-pound Chihuahua that has nothing to do with anything at all. Like nothing of nothing. Like what's a Chihuahua do? It sits on your lap, it barks, it poops, it's hell on 4 feet. You know what I mean? Like, and I trained the thing like it was a bulldog. Like that little guy would jump into streams. He would go swimming. He would walk the treadmill. He would do flirt pole. I set up a little spring pole for him, and he would sit there and shake the little spring pole. And it was a good feeling to walk into a room with some of the best trainers in the country and everybody stop and go, oh, there's Pee-wee. And everybody would want to come over and just watch this little 7-pound dog. And he took it extremely serious. Like he took it extremely serious. He knew what his job was. He'd turn around and people would, no way you did that with that. And I learned a lot as a trainer, how to, I think I grew a lot. And I think my wife did as well, because the training is very different with something that small. You have to be really patient. Your corrections are like almost non-existent, because, how are you going to correct a 7-pound Chihuahua? Like it's you know what I mean? So you have to like look at training from a different view now, right? And how do I get this little animal that's not really meant for any of this to do something like weight pull and still make it look like he's having a good time. You know what I'm saying? And like he wants to be there and he's not being forced into doing anything. And that was a challenge, but I wouldn't train it. I wouldn't trade it for the world. Like I feel like as a trainer, that's what made me grow. And now from that experience, I've changed the rest of the way I train my dogs. After training that little dog, that really made me change the way I train everybody. So,
that's interesting. So before Pee-wee, how was the typical training?
I think it might have been, I might have been a little too quick to dismiss a dog. It's not, I don't think the mental fortitude is there. This dog doesn't want to be there. Or maybe, I might have been quick to go, you're going to get a slight correction for not, engaging a certain way. It was too quick to that, where with Pee-wee, you couldn't do that. Like it's the dog is just too small. You have to look at it. How do I get him to want to do this and not correct an animal, right? Not given some form of correction or anything like that. And after learning how to do that with him, and really, I apply that now to almost every dog that I do now. Like the Boer Boel I have now, Sun Wukong, he has not had a single correction, which is, I'm not saying that at some point you don't have to correct a dog. There's always going to be some form of correction at some point in time. But so far, what I've learned with that little dog, applying it to this big dog, it's helped my training tremendously. And I tell people all the time, if you can, find an off breed. Find a little off breed somewhere and really test your training, and then see, because the pit bull it's so easy, pit bull, and I say easy, but you get what I'm trying to say. They're meant to work. They want to be there. They want to work. They want to do something. When you find an off breed and something as silly as a Chihuahua, it's your training is going to get tested. It's going to get, your patience is going to get tested. Your training is going to get tested. I definitely became more patient after that little dog. I probably owe a lot of it to that little dog. It was as a trainer, I feel like that was probably the best thing I could have ever done, was go outside of my comfort zone, try something ridiculously, no way in hell that's going to be able to work out, and then make it work, and then go, wow, this really changed the way I look at the sport and how to train, for sure.
Yeah. Nice. Interesting. And do you, because this is quite interesting. You can get very far in weight pulling by training in many different ways, but it's mainly, in my mind at least, the emphasis is on two different things, either drag work or cart work. And what's your most preferred, or has it changed during the years?
Yeah, I've tried so many different ways because you want to see, well, does it work? Does somebody else is doing something? Well, let me try it and see. All I can say is let me try it and see if it works. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. For me, and the way we do it now, I prefer drag work.
Yeah.
I prefer drag work. I feel like I lose some power when I start focusing too much on the track. I like to use track work as like the finishing, as like once everything is already done, now I'll put you on the track, and that's where we teach you to stay on the track, not to jump off, and then slowly build up the mental fortitude to keep trying on the track. That's it. That's all I use the track for. Everything else is done out in the field.
Yeah.
And I tell people, and we did that for years. We never had a track for almost 20 years. We didn't have a track. This year is our first time actually having a track, like an official track.
Yeah.
Before that, we have what we call a drag track, which is 2x4s on pieces of plywood, some cushioning there, and throw the carpet over top of it. And I had like a little one like that in the basement, and I used that to finish dogs out.
Yeah.
And then before that, we would just take 4x4s and lay them out in the field to teach the dogs to go straight and simulate like you're walking down a track, so they're in the dirt, there's 4x4s, they turn them around, walk, clip them. And if they would touch, one of the sides, obviously then they're going like this, and then you guide the dog to go stay in the middle. And that kind of would prepare them for track work as well. And we did that, and we had success like that for years. Yeah. But at some point in time, you start to realize, okay, I got to get them on carpet, because there is a different feel for the dog. They get too used to being on dirt and grass, and they're used to grabbing a certain way. And then when you get them on carpet, they're like, well, this is different. Yeah. So that's where I feel the track work comes into play for us. You know what I mean? I know there's some people like the Haasvelds, they do a lot of track work. I think especially with puppies, it's almost like you're walking a fine line, because the mental is so not developed yet. And I say this all the time, especially on track, you're walking this line, and you can go either way with the puppy. If you do a little bit too much, you're going this way, and then you're looking at it like, oh, this dog's not going to make it, and if you go a little too much this way, the dog is doing well. A lot of times you go, oh, then I can add more weight, or I can do more. And just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I say that all the time. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And you have a tendency, we all do. I have a tendency of, it's doing so well, let me do some more. Let me do some more. And a lot of the times, then you go from this side, now you're leaning back over to it, and you're doing this teeter-totter, so much. And I feel like the slightest mistake can just mess up a puppy, or mess up a young dog that probably could have been well or did really good if you just gave it a little bit more time, or maybe eased off the track time. I feel track is hard. I think because it's pressure. It's a lot of pressure. It's short. You end up putting more and more weight at a shorter distance. And so I try to stay away from it until it's necessary. And I found that works better for us. Finishing the dog off, doing everything out on the field as much as possible, and then transitioning to the track. And I've had a lot of success doing it that way. Yeah. I say success. I've had dogs that were able now to compete, and I wasn't looking at them going, I messed you up. I messed up, and because especially with a young dog, you're right here on that fine line. And then sometimes that little bit of mess up in the wrong direction now can just set you back weeks. Yeah. Can just put you, and you can see it in young dogs. Sometimes you see them when they're coming down the track, and you see this, panicky, and they want to come down, and you can go, it's a little too much on that dog. You should have just eased off, and I like to cut the fluff out. I cut all of that extra puppy stuff. I cut it all out, and I just wait until the dog's a little bit older. Yeah. Then we go right into that. I don't like my puppies running on the track. Sometimes you see people that have pups in a little harness and they're running up and down the track. And while it's cool looking and it's cute and all that, for me, I go, that's more training, because now we're going on the track. You're teaching a dog to run. You're teaching the dog, you hit the track, and now it's run time. It's run, it's run, it's run. Now when you're ready and you actually put it on the track to do some work, well, this whole entire time for the last 3 months, you've been coming on this track, on this carpet, and it's been running. And it's here. Now you hook it up to some weight, and now it goes, wait, I can't run. I can't run. What's going on? And now your training starts all over again.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, anyway, right? So I just cut that part out. Like, I don't want to have to retrain, so I'll just wait till you mature enough. Then we'll put you on there and we're walking, we're walking. When I put dogs on the track, we walk, because no dog has ever won a high percentage or a most weight pulled running down the track. Like, you know what I'm saying? Unless there was no competition, right? But when you're against competition, it's a slow, methodical pull. Here comes the weight. So my mentality for that is I want to teach that right from the beginning. I don't ever want them to think you run. This harness comes on, it's run time. No, this harness comes on and we're walking. We're walking. I want to mentally slow the dog down and prepare to, when the weight comes, okay, stay calm, stay cool. We're going to teach you that as long as you stay calm and cool, you're going to be able to move it. Some dogs are what they are. Like, they just want to pull fast, and that just is what it is. But you can tell with certain dogs that they've had a little too much too fast. With, you see that sporadic pulling, and then in turn it messes up their style, and then they just never get quite as far if you don't fix it. And then for me, I'm like, I don't want to have to fix it. I've done that already. I've already challenged myself in fixing it. I want to make it as easy as possible now. I'm too old to be having to, let me try to mess. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to do that. I want to make it as smooth, as seamless as possible. So I cut out a lot of the fluff. And I wait and I never want them running on the track at all, ever.
Yeah. I get that. And do you think that also slowing down the drag work is also beneficiary?
Absolutely.
For this? Yeah.
Absolutely. My wife was saying that the other day. She goes, maybe you should take a video of the actual pace. So when we start off, in the beginning, I'll let them go at their pace a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And then as we start going into the training, now I start trying to slow the dog down some. So, and I do a lot of that basically because I'll do obedience in the beginning. So while some people want to get a young puppy, and these are debates that me and Emmanuel have all the time. So I'm not saying anything that he hasn't already heard me say, or anybody else for that matter. Everybody knows my position on this. Where they're doing that stuff with puppies, I'll turn around and I'll do obedience with a puppy. Yeah. I'll teach them to walk on my left-hand side. I'll teach them that my leg moves forward. I give them a cue. They move forward. They're sitting there, they're walking with me, looking, and I dictate the pace, and I start teaching them to walk slower and slower with me, right? And I'll do that for a while with them, and I'll do those. That's my puppy preparation for weight pull, and I'll do techniques like that, preparing them so then when the harness is on and it's time to move forward now, right? It's the same thing, except we're doing the same obedience that we did before, except that now you just have a harness on you, right? Yeah. And then the dog's like, oh, okay, there's just a harness on me. I'll do that for a day or two. Then we'll add the chain. Then we'll add a little bit of weight. And then, once the dog has learned, within a couple of days, okay. There's just something behind me. No, this is everything. Everything else is the same. There's just something behind me. Okay. Then now I try to keep the pace a little slower. Yeah. Now I know you want to go forward, but this is the pace. And since I taught the dog already to stay by my side, like in the obedience, now they know, I want to go forward, but no, I have to stay here. I have to stay right here. And then we transition to that, letting the dog, and I feel that helps. I don't like to put the dog in the heart and just go and let the dog just go and they're doing their own thing. I'm too much of a control freak. I want to control every aspect of it as much as possible, and then I can tell, is it the dog? Is it my training? Is it the dog that mentally needs to mature a little bit more? I get to rule out those factors by doing it that way, in my opinion anyway. I get to see that. I get to see how the dog reacts to it versus just clipping it up and putting the dog in a leash and just letting it go. I get to see how the dog starts to react because they're like, oh, there's something behind me, but I'm supposed to stay right with this left leg and stay right here, and then they slowly start to develop that. And as time goes by over the next couple of weeks, we get slower and slower and slower. I have one that I literally half step when we walk. like I'm not taking full strides. I'm taking half strides. You know, I'm taking half strides, and the dog's like, okay, we're taking half strides, you know, because I wanted to get comfortable moving at that pace, because if you want to win, you're probably going to win at that pace.
Yeah.
You know, if that makes sense, you know,
the winning pulls aren't ever the fastest ones.
Correct. You're never going to win it like that unless there's nobody there, you know, and you're just hooking up and there's nobody. But if you're competing against the best people out there, you're going to slow down. The dog's going to slow down. The weight's going to get heavy. The percentage is going to be high. And the only way to complete something like that is at a slower pull. And if the dogs aren't used to slowing down mentally and physically, you're not going to win. You're not going to win. So I cut it all out from the beginning. The beginning, my training is slow down. Yeah. And then everything else is easier from there. You know, at least that's just the way that we approach it.
Yeah. I really like that, because over here, our rule set is a little bit different, and we have more obedience in the pull. So we don't have the release that you do. The dogs have to stay, and the handler has to leave the dog before the dog gets a possibility to start pull.
Yeah.
And then to slow down the pace makes very much sense for everybody to train instead, because then you don't get the false start and you don't get the overexcited dog. Because we can't call on the dog until we have reached the finish line.
Oh, okay. So that like IWPA rules is we call that IWPA rules over here. Yeah. So you have to hook the animal up, move forward, cross the line, and then the dog is allowed to go forward. The dog can go forward when you leave the dog, but you can't call on it. You can't call on it. Okay. It's IWPA rules like that.
And if you have an overeager dog in the beginning there, then they can have failed like 3 or 4 times before you even get the chance to support them. So So that's where the obedience would come into play. You know, that's where the obedience, and it's just a little bit. Like I tell people all the time, you don't need to do like competition ready obedience. You know, you're not doing just little things. I've seen some dogs that were pretty good pullers, but the dog barely even knew its name. It's like teach it something else as well. And then I bet you can see it go a little bit farther, you know. And in our experience, that has helped a lot. And I learned that a lot with that little tiny Chihuahua, teaching him little things like that, you know, and I really still to this day, because of that, I implement it on everybody. I generally feel like I see a big difference from doing it. Yeah. So when it comes to the Boer Boels, do they enjoy the drag work, or how are they? Because what I've heard over here is they don't really enjoy that type of work.
I don't know if any dog really enjoys working out to that extent. I don't know if we can say anybody. I think we have certain dogs that just want to be with you and just want to do anything you want to do, right? Like I don't care what it is. You're there. Let's go do it. Like it's your ride or die. And some dogs have that mentality. And this is where it comes to picking a dog out, right? So where you have more of a dominant dog, it's kind of like want to do his own thing. It wants you to follow him. When you're doing something like an activity like weight pull, and the dog's got to follow you. You know, so if you have a breed has more dominant tendencies, more independent tendencies, it's looking at you like, I don't follow you. You got to follow me. What are you doing? Right. So you can see that with the Boer Boel, or you see that with more independent breeds in general, or even a more dominant dog. You know, you see that. And those dogs are always a little bit more harder to train. And they're always, not to say that you can't turn them into a good dog, but you know, it takes more skill set. It takes more patience. I have both types here with the Boer Boels. Like I have Sun Wukong. That dog doesn't care whatever I want him to do. He is just, whatever it is, let's go do it. You know, you can see him in the middle of the night, and the second he sees you, he's like, where are we gonna go? You know, that's what he does. You know, where like his brother is just like, what's up, man? You got hot dogs? No? Okay, I'm gonna go back to sleep. And that's the difference between two dogs out the same exact litter, right? You know, the training, it's obviously easier to train a dog that's just like whatever you want, you know, whatever you want to do, you know. So I see both aspects of that. You know what I mean? I see both aspects of that. Obviously, the ones that just want to be there and just want to do whatever are always easier. That little puppy conquest that we have, she doesn't care. The thing minus will be like an 80-pound, working bred American Pit Bull Terrier. Whatever it is you want to do, you want me to climb this A-frame, you want me to climb up this trampoline, you want me to go up these steps, let's go. Let's go. I'm there. That's her. You know what I mean? Yeah. And those dogs are easy to train because they just want to be with you, whatever you want to do, So she's not super like independent. She's not a really overly dominant dog. Those are that. But you have a breed like the Boer Boel, which they tend to be like that. The Boer Boel tends to be a dominant breed, tends to be an independent dog. It's bred to be like a sentient guard dog. And most sentient guard dogs are supposed to think for themselves, be independent, be dominant. So you can see that, but I also have the other side of it as well too, so you can see both aspects of it, at least with what I have here anyway,
Yeah. It's interesting because, as you said, you have two dogs from the same litter and they have so different personalities. So it's, you don't know. That's one of the best part, I assume, by breeding the dogs yourself, because
you get to see that. And then it goes even further because it sucks because like the one that has more of the independent personality, he has the better style.
Yeah.
He has, and I'm like, of course you're the one with the better style. I'm like, great. Great. I'm like, great. Son tries and his mental fortitude is fantastic. He just doesn't have the best style. He's a little more straighter in the elbows. He still does well. But if I had to pick a style, I want that creepy, crawly, super bend at the elbows coming down, where his brother's 180 pounds and his belly's on the ground. And you're like, whoa, that's impressive for a monster of an animal. Yeah. He's just like, you ain't got no hot dogs, bro. I don't know. I don't know how we doing this, man. So where like the puppy conquest that we have, she's off of Mr. Wednesday, which is where my hot dogs. That's the hot dog guy. But she has the mental outlook of Son. Like she has the great style already. You see it there, but she has that mental of whatever you want. Whatever you want, 3:00 in the morning, let's go. We're doing it, and that's where I'm like, okay, this dog might do some things because she has the style, she has the mentality for it, the trainability. I call it trainability. You're constantly looking for dogs that are just easier to train, want to please. And you're like, oh, okay, this dog, I see that in this young dog, she might be able to go somewhere early. You can pick that out. You can pick that out at an early age and you can see that. But that's the benefits of breeding your own dogs is you can start to learn that. You can start to pick out lines. You get to see stuff like that. And again, with the Boer Boel, this is all uncharted waters. Many of people will say that they have working Boer Boels and you'll be like, well, where are the titles at? Where are this? And there's none of that. There's none of that. And that's just the reality with having a breed like this. There's none of that. They barely do anything with the breed. So
yeah, exactly. So when it comes to style, you told us what you prefer when it comes to style, but do you think that it could be trained, or is it just comes naturally for the dog?
I think style is genetic. I think you can tweak a style a little bit. I think you can highlight certain aspects of a style. You can make it a little bit better, or you can make it a little worse, depending on what you do. But I don't think, and I've never seen it. I've never been able to take a dog that's, soldiering it super straight and then transform it to where it's, creeping and crawling on the ground now. I've been able to tweak it a little bit, and maybe get a little bit more of a bend, but I've never been able to completely transform it. And which leads me to believe that it's genetic. And you can see it in the lines of American Pit Bull Terriers that have been bred, through the years now for weight pulling, where now you're starting to see more and more dogs that are bending really well. Their bodies are, parallel to the carpet, like they're sucked down, and they're being bred to other dogs with similar styles, and almost the whole entire litter is coming out like that. Yeah. And then you're starting to see generations of that, which is proving my point. Style is genetic. I think it's a genetic component. I think it has something to do with the angulations of the shoulder and the rear, and it's causing that, style to do that. I've had some dogs that might start off hot, like they would engage the weight so hard that they come up. And then after 2 or 3 steps, they would suck themselves down. That I've seen that, but I've never been able to change a dog that's been pulling like this. And then all of a sudden it's on the ground looking like a creature that came out of your television. I've never been able to do that.
No, that's my impression also when it comes to, and especially it feels, the angulation in the rear end it's more common to have okay angulation, at least not perfect for all, but at least okay. But the shoulder angulation is that's the big difference. I think it has something to do with the shoulder. And me and my wife would have long conversations about this, especially years ago. We used to make harnesses and stuff like that, and we had a harness making company, and we sold. And so that was a really big discussion, because sometimes people would say, well, the harness, and we're like, no. I mean, we make harnesses, and we're telling you no harness is going to change your dog's genetic style. I think it can help highlight it. I think a well-fitting harness helps it. And obviously, if a harness is too small and it's choking a dog out, yes, it's going to make a dog want to throw his head, and it's going to change the style. But when all things are equal, I think it just comes down to genetics. I think it has something to do with that front shoulder angulation. I think that's what it is. Yeah, I think so as well. When it comes to the drag work, when I talk to both Emmanuel and Jonathan and Brian, it seems like at least with those guys that you go way shorter distances than we typically do over here. So how long are your?
Mine's a little different. So I do things a little differently. So first of all, my drag chain is really, really long. My drag chain is probably about 75 feet long. Yeah, my chain is really, really long. It's more of a heavy duty chain. Like it's like, they're probably about like that, and I put the weight all the way at the end. I use plates, anywhere between 5-pound plates, 10-pound plates, 25, 35-pound plates. And I add the weight on top of them, and I kind of chain them up together. And right now, my distance for my Boer Boels, which for them, they're bigger. So their strides are bigger. They cover ground a lot faster than, a 40-pound dog does. I do 7 acres and back is what I do. So we do, I call it the 7-acre turnaround. Emmanuel's like, you can't be telling people that. They're running the dogs out 7 acres. And I'm like, I do 7 acres. I do 7 acres one way, 7 acres back. That's 1 lap. That's what I consider 1 lap. My property is at a slight incline, so coming back is always a little easier than going up. So I consider that 1 lap. And we'll do, depending on where we at on the training regiment, depending on where we at on the keep, on how close we are to the show, depends on how many laps of that we're going to do. But on average, it's 1.5 to 2 laps is what we do with that. And again, that's because I focus more on the field than I do on the track. So I try to focus, and that's where I get the power from. And this is where I get some cardio as well from, because we're doing that long distance as well. So I don't have to worry as much about cardio as some of these guys that do it shorter distances. So it's a kind of like a hybrid combination.
Yeah. So, but do you do that continuously, or is there resting?
Yes, there's going to be rest. And, this, you got to read the dog, right? So I'm looking at the dog, and probably with a dog that's out of shape or early into the keep regiment, we're going to stop several times along the way. Yeah. Soon as we're getting like a quarter way up, you see the dog starting to really slow down, and we're starting to get that really slow pace. And I'm seeing, okay, well, and I'll catch it right before it's just a little too, okay, boom, stop. Okay, now we're going to stop. We're going to hang out. We're going to talk. I'm going to pet him, give him a treat, let it cool off for a few minutes. And then we're going to engage again. Let's go. Yeah. And then we'll do that again. And if I got to stop right away, like 10 feet after that, because it's still too, then we just stop, we'll stop. And I'll do that depending on where we're at. Now, if I have it in my mind that we're going to do, 1 lap, which is up and back, but we're getting halfway up and it's becoming too much, we're going to cut that in half, and we're going to go right back down, and we're done. Yeah.
Of course.
So you're going to have to adjust it along the way, or there might be a little too much weight, take a little bit more off, and then do that. As we get closer and closer to the event, as we get further into the keep, the dogs are going to get stronger and stronger. That's going to become easier and easier. And then what starts to happen is as we're getting closer to the event, then the weight increases, but the distance gets cut shorter and shorter.
Yeah.
So now I might incorporate sometimes where instead of doing a lap up and back, we're going to do a half a lap up and half a lap back. But now the weight is pretty high, is pretty heavy. It's pretty heavy. So we'll cut that and we'll do that and then we'll switch it. It won't be every day like that. We'll only do that 4 days a week, maybe 5 days, maybe depending on the dog, depending on where we're at. I want to make sure there's enough rest time in between. I wouldn't do that every day. Some people say, I would train my dog. I don't do that every day. There has to be enough rest time
as well.
Yeah, it has to be enough rest. The rest is more important in my mind than the actual work.
Yeah.
The work has to be there, obviously. Yeah, but if the rest isn't there, all that work is for nothing.
Yeah.
All that work is for nothing. You're just going to mentally fry the dog. And then physically, they need that recovery time. They really do.
Yeah, they need to rest and they need to eat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how many dogs do you have at home right now?
Right now we have 7.
7. So a lot of feeding going on.
A lot of feeding. A lot of feeding. Big dogs. A lot of feeding. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you do kibble or do you do raw or?
Yeah. We do kibble right now. I used to feed raw. We used to make our own food. Years ago, I made all our own food from scratch. I just don't have the time to do that right now. It's time consuming. It's expensive, to do it the right way. It becomes expensive because you're switching in liver, you're switching in lamb. I'm getting mackerel, I'm getting salmon, and I'm switching the protein up as we're going along. And then as we get closer to the event, then the amount of protein gets switched, the type of fats get switched. I might increase the fat depending on how much cardio we're doing or not doing, and so on and so on. So, we did that for many, many years. I just don't have the time for it now. No. I wish I did, but I just don't. I don't. Yeah. So like a dog like Son he's, roughly 160-ish, 170. He's probably getting about 5 cups of kibble a day. Yeah. 5 to 6 cups.
So did he ever eat raw? No.
He will.
Yeah. He will. Yeah. So do you see a difference between kibble and raw feeding?
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. I think the major difference comes down if you have like a smaller dog, let's just say, 35, 45 pound dog, and you're trying to cut weight. Yeah. That's when you really get to see the difference. Kibble takes longer to digest in the stomach, where the raw gets put out pretty quick. So if you have a dog that you're trying to make weight, and you're trying to get into a certain weight category, raw is the way to go because it's in and out of the system a lot faster and it holds less gut fat. Gut fat is useless, right? It's just weight that's there. With the raw, it's in and out, and you get to really see the dog's weight with that. Where kibble takes a little longer. Not to say that you can't do it with kibble. You can. I have, but you have to regulate it now. You got to be a little bit more. You got to pay more attention to the weight and when you feed, what time of the day. I feel like you got to be very consistent of when you feed because you want to know how long it's taking to digest and get out of the dog system. Again, and we're talking about because you're trying to meet a specific weight. You know what I mean? Yeah. If you're not too worried about weight, then it's fine. But if you're sitting there and you're trying to be the bigger dog in a lighter class, that weight becomes a big factor.
Yeah, of course. Do you see any but your experience when you did raw feeding, the balance between protein and fat, when you come closer and closer to a show? Did you do any different balances between protein and fat?
It would depend on how much cardio I was going to do. Yeah. So where a lot of people like to do the cardio just to do the cardio because they think the cardio is for weight pulling. I never use the cardio as the weight pulling itself. If you really sit there and think about it, they're not really using a whole lot of cardio. You're just going 15, 16 feet. Right. The cardio for us was because we wanted to work the weight off the dog. I don't want to starve the weight off. I don't want to withhold too much food because that's the weight that I want to get to. So I want to still feed the animal enough food that we're keeping you at a good, comfortable weight without putting out too much gut fat and being able to burn that to the right weight. So depending on how much cardio we were doing to get down, then I would adjust the fat levels and would raise it up. When we had the smaller dogs, I didn't do a lot of treadmill work. I did more swimming. Swimming for us was a bigger thing. The way we equivalent it, and I think you can look it up. I think I'm pretty accurate when I say like 15 minutes of swimming equals like 45 minutes of running for the dog. So we would do a lot of swimming, and I could see a big difference on how the weight was being dropped when it came to swimming. But swimming burns a lot. So I would increase the fats. And that's usually when I started doing a lot more swimming, I started incorporating a lot more mackerel into the diet and a lot more salmon oil into the diet because it's good fats. And I always do a lot of omega-3, 6s, and 9s because it helps with inflammation. It helps keep the inflammation down, helps keep that, and gives them good fuel to burn when they're doing that type of swimming, because we did a lot of swimming.
Yeah, and swimming is really good because the pressure on the joints are gone. So and because weight pulling, you can say a lot about it, but at least it's pressure on the joints.
It's pressure on the joints.
Yeah.
And I think we're foolish to think that it's not, right? You see weightlifters, their joints, right? It's the same thing. So I tell people a lot of times, omega-3s, 6s, and 9s, that helps the joints. It helps inflammation. Glucosamine and chondroitin helps with the joints. For me, it's like standard protocol. I think every dog, regardless of the size, should be a glucosamine, chondroitin, should be on large doses of omega-3, 6s, and 9s to help with that and help combine that. I've had better results. I've had less injury because of that. It's really something that I can't stress enough.
Yeah, I can only go to myself. When I started, 6 months ago, pretty much, with taking more omega-6, I think it was, And my joints are way better.
Way better.
Yeah. I'm starting to get old, so it's So and do you do any other supplements like creatine or anything?
I think creatine should be like the number one thing on everybody's. Yeah. It's good recovery. The only thing that you have to worry about creatine, again, when you're going into a weight class, creatine, you're going to retain more water. So, depending on where you're at with that, you're going to have to pull it away, when you get closer to the event, because then you want to dry some of that extra water weight off. But creatine rehydrates the muscle. It's really good. I mean, especially if you're trying to meet a weight class, and you're monitoring how much water the dog is intaking and all that other stuff. I think creatine is like a must, for those dogs that you are sucking down into other categories. You just have to know when to pull it away, because if you go right into a show with too much creatine, you're just holding too much extra water weight. So it's usually something that you have to pull away. Maybe like I say, 15 to 35 days, depending on the dog and this before an event, but creatine is great, for sure.
So it's up to 35 days as well.
Yeah. It depends on the dog, because everybody's different. Every dog is different. Some dogs tend to hold more than I find females hold more water than males. Males like to piss it out a lot, right? They want to mark way more than females do. So they excrete the water way easier than females do. So that's another, with females, I would try to pull that away sooner. And kind of, okay, I get to really see where your weight's at now, but it's tricky when you're doing, working with creatine because of that extra water weight. So you got to kind of have to remember that when they're on that, like you're probably holding an extra 2 or 3 pounds just of water. So you kind of have to pull it away early. If you had a dog you got a real dominant dog that's marking everything all the time, and he's just peeing all the time, you probably get away with 15 days. But if you get one that doesn't do that, I say pull it away even early.
Yeah, that's a good advice. I had a question here about it. The age. Blow it away. But when it comes to off season and compete season, do you train on the off season, or do you rest them fully, or how does that work for you?
So I usually use off season for new dogs. New up and coming dogs, and give the veterans their time off, and just let them be dogs. That's, for dogs that are already fully trained, that's the time where we're just doing dog stuff. We're just hanging out, going on car rides, playing ball, playing frisbee, just doing just normal, regular dog stuff. I don't even want to touch pulling. I want to give them that time off to just completely reset, and that's usually like 2 or 3 months, depending on where it is. And then I'll use that time to any new and upcoming dogs. I'll focus on them and give the vets a time to just relax and just do regular dog stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there's a difference between, as always, between folks, how to do that. But the interesting part is that all of your 3 Americans, or now 4 with you, that I've talked to, all do this really off-season 2 or 3 months with veteran dogs, and to let them rest and recuperate. Yeah. Because you have time, because the style is there.
Everything is there. Everything is there. So all you have to do now is basically, once you have a seasoned dog like that and you give them some time off, now when it comes back, all the hard stuff is already done. You're just conditioning the muscle again, and then any little fine tweaking that you have to do here, a little bit of this on the track, maybe that you're missing, or you got a little sloppy with this, a little sloppy with that. But most of the work is already done. And I think that's where some of these guys like Emmanuel, they like to get it done early because they like he says, I want to get all that out of the way with my puppy early and then give him time off. And then where I'm the opposite of that. I'm like, I'll wait, but it makes sense. And then almost everybody, that I know of does the same thing, off season time, just put them up, let them get a good reset. That's what I say. Just let them get a good reset. Let them be a regular dog. And a lot of the times I notice that dogs will come back better. They come back stronger, especially you have a dog that's teetering on the, I really don't want to do this kind of, and then you give them a couple months off, and then they come back and because you spent time with them just doing regular dog stuff. Now they're looking at you like, oh, well, we're just doing regular dog stuff, again. And it's, we're back to training, but they've been spending time with you doing things like that. And then they're like, okay. I see a shift in dogs like that from doing that, for sure.
Yeah. The relationship between you and the dog increases also when you do other stuff as well.
And that's why I say, with young dogs, I rather do relationship building exercises. For me, for us here, I would rather spend that time learning the dog learning me. I get to learn the quirks of the dog gets to learn my training techniques. The communication is open now. I get to communicate to the dog's communicating with me. We're both learning each other, and we're spending those critical puppy stages. I rather do that with the dog. So, and then when it's time to work at, 8, 9, 10 months old, 12 months, whatever. And then I understand how this dog works now. I understand the quirks of this dog. I understand that this dog is, maybe a little bit more dominant of a dog, and maybe I have to, approach things a little differently. Or it's a little more sensitive, handler sensitive, and it's really not going to take well to the slight corrections. We have to be really, really soft on this dog. I get to learn that. And build the confidence up, because that's a big thing, is building the confidence up. So I'll do a lot of confidence building exercises leading up into the training aspect for weight pull, that, and then I get to really understand and go, okay, I can tailor my training techniques a little bit different to you, and that helps for us. Again, that helps for us.
Yeah. That sounds really, really good. Yeah. The confidence is a really big.
It's a big thing.
Yeah.
It's a big thing. It's a big thing. You want to, it's hard with a dog that doesn't have a lot of confidence. It's scared of everything, and it's just looking around. It's scared. And some dogs are that's just their genetics, right? Like some dogs are just squirrely dogs, and it's just going to be that. And some dogs just need a little bit more exposure. They need a little more handling. They just need to be raised up in confidence, And again, I learned that the hard way with that Chihuahua, because we had to build we got him. He was just a scared little Chihuahua. Yeah. He's looking at me bright eyed like this. And he's like, what do you want me to do? The poor thing wouldn't walk from the kitchen to the living room. Oh. He was horrified. He would hang out in the kitchen, but to get him to walk from the kitchen to the living room, he'd stop and like, no, I'm not going over there, and I have to start doing little trails of treats and little trails everywhere to get him to come out, and then little confidence building exercises and build up his confidence, that by the time we started, actually training, we'd walk in, and I had a buddy, he would say, man, that thing's a little pit bull. He would walk into the room and demand attention. You know, he'd walk into any room and he's like, and he's walking around and he's barking at everybody and he's pulling on the leash and he's trying to go here. And they're like, this thing's a little pit bull. How in the world did you do that? But it took time to build up his confidence. It was a great learning experience. You know, I know it sounds silly with a little chihuahua like that, but from a trainer's perspective, it really changed my mind, and it really helped understand different aspects of training and how to bring that out, you know, and really emphasize that confidence building is a very important thing, especially even in this sport.
Yeah. I can see pretty much every show you can pretty fast spot the dogs that don't have that really big confidence, and you can see the difference. Style is very important, of course, but confidence is when you see the winning dogs, they have confidence for at least 10 dogs.
Yes. Yeah. You can see that, and you can see the difference in training on certain dogs as well, just by how they're walking towards the track or walking down the track. You can tell that they might have had, you know, the trainer might have been a little too hard, you know, or they've had a little too much in one direction and not so much in the other direction, right? You know, they're walking down, they're like, you know, they might pull good on the track, but you see them as they're coming to the track, they're wide-eyed like this, and they're like, you know, and you're like, you work, but I want you looking like, you know, you're scared for your fucking life. You know, probably not. You know, exactly. That's, you know, so, and again, some dogs are just naturally spooky, and that just is. But you can, if you really pay attention, you can see the training in certain dogs. You know, you see that for sure.
Yeah. When it comes to the start, do you have a tip or anything to get the dog that really digs in, even when it's really heavy, and they don't just try one or two times, but you know, they never stop?
Yeah, that's for us, that's nurtured out in the field. I'll do, depending on where they're at in their training. So we'll take, I can eyeball it now, but in the beginning, I would take cones, and I would put cones out every 5, 10 feet, 15 feet, 2 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet. And we would get to it, stop, whoa, start again. And then get to the next cone, whoa, stop, start again. And keep doing it over and over and over and over again like that. And then you start to do that. We would do that with heavier and heavier weight.
Yeah.
And and I'm there with the dog. And what starts to happen is the mentality of the dog is, well, you're asking me to do this. You've never let me fail. Yeah. That's the key to it, is never let them fail. Even if you have to stop in mid-work, mid-pull, whatever, and you're looking like this is where reading a dog is so important. You see that step, and understanding the dog, where you know your dog's corks, and you know that if that foot is going too much this way, you know it's getting ready to stop. Whoa, right there. Or you're right there with a spot line or something to pull the weight through. And that little bit of catching it at the right moment will mentally produce a stronger dog, because they've never failed. They've never failed, no matter how much you've done that. And no matter how tired they are, when we do those stop, start, they understand, okay, it's going to move. It's going to move. It's going to move. Every time I move forward, it's going to move no matter what. And that's kind of like the little tip for that. At least I feel that.
Yeah. And so the way to screw that up is to go to a show and demand too much. And to push it and not read your dog, not to see that the last pull was on the edge, and it's
that
time
was
to back off.
You have to be realistic with yourself and say, this is what we've gotten at home in training. I probably shouldn't go too much farther than that. You know, regardless if that means you took a 5th place, even if it means you took a last, even if it's your rival is there and you're like, I wanted to win, I had to win. No, it's better to just do that there than to risk months of retraining, because it's sometimes with some dogs, it's literally that simple. It's just that one time, and then that's it. Now you have weeks of retraining. And some dogs are forgivers, where they'll forgive that, and you know, and you'll get away with being able to, and some dogs you just won't. You know, you have to be realistic with yourself and understand the dog that's in front of you and say, I can't do that with this dog, or I probably shouldn't. And again, even though I say all the time, because you can doesn't mean you should. Like, yeah, I could probably do that a little more, but you know what? This dog isn't experienced enough. We're going to call it a wrap right here. It's done. It's done right here. And then what you do is you take a mental note of that. You take a mental note of how the dog was acting, the stress level, what the weight was at, how it was, and then you go back home and you try to replicate that. Yeah. And then you try to build from that point on. And that seems to help, a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good advice. So when do you think a dog is at its weight pulling peak? Is there an age, or is there?
Yeah, I think you start to lose strength at about 5 or 6 years old. I think that's when you start to lose that strength. A 3-year-old dog is probably right there. Three to 4-year-old dog, it's at its peak. Once you start getting into the 6-year range, you're going to start losing some strength there. Not to say that you can't have a good dog, but most of my dogs most of the pit bulls I was retiring them around 6, 6, maybe 7. If they did pull, it was just for shits and giggles. Like, it was just for fun. I wasn't and a lot of the times what happens is it's harder to take the weight off of them at that age.
Yeah.
The weight becomes harder and harder to condition off because they're older, they're holding more muscle mass, they just hold fat a lot easier. And then you start to say to yourself, is it really worth putting this much conditioning now to get you into that lower class? And it becomes, you're starting to do more conditioning and less weight pull training to get them into that class. Yeah. Again, not so much of a big deal with these giant breeds, right? That's not going to be so much of an issue, but that competitive class, which is that 30 all the way to like 60 pounds, and you're conditioning these dogs down to get the biggest dog in the smaller class, you start to run into those issues. You start to run.
Yeah. Is there, because this is quite interesting. You have said that a couple of times now, to have the bigger dog in the smaller class, biggest dog even. So that's the aim for the most people, to have the biggest dog in the smaller class.
A lot of the times, yeah. A lot of the times it's kind of like, if you're watching like a UFC fighter, you see those guys that are like, they're just giants for that weight class. You're like, how in the world did this guy is 2 feet taller than everybody else, and they're sucked down to that. And they so it's kind of the same. It's that same analogy. You want, if you can get a larger dog that's taller, that has more leverage, that's longer in a lighter class, you most likely you're gonna beat the dog that's shorter to the ground, that's holding more, more body fat than other dogs. So that's usually the goal with some of those dogs. If you can get a 45-pound dog that's naturally 40 pounds and you can get him down to like 37, 35, because it's you can get off that much if you can. You can't always do that. Some dogs you can just get 5 pounds off and you're like, okay, that's it. There's no more. We can't take any more off. And some dogs are built like that. Some dogs are built that they're just longer, rangier dogs. They're longer dogs, and you can really get that greyhound look to them, where you're really sucking down a lot of the body fat off the dog, but still keeping all the muscle in the right spots, right? You want nice round hips. You don't want flat hips. You want the big balls of muscle back there. You want to see that nice lat line going across the rib cage, and you look at the animal, you go, that is a conditioned masterpiece. Right. That's usually the goal with that middle class. That's usually the goal. Not to say that you can't perform well with dogs that are holding more of a natural weight. But what happens is somebody comes in that really knows what they're doing on conditioning and has this giraffe in your weight class. He's probably going to put it on you.
Yeah. Because it's so interesting, because over here it's the opposite way, because everybody looking to have the smallest dog in your weight class. So everybody is flirting on the lower line of the weight class for the percentages.
Which is that's kind of like the same thing. It's just you want the biggest dog sucked down to the smaller class. That's what it is. So you want to have the biggest, tallest, longest dog in the lightest class that you can get it in. And a lot of times it's that, like, everybody's shooting for that lower number because of the percentage, but sometimes you can have a dog that's the high end of that class, but it's because it was sucked down from 2 classes higher. So all because it's not on that bottom end, it's still the biggest dog in that class. And a lot of the times you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You're in trouble when that happens. Yeah.
It's maybe we will come there eventually over here as well. It's that's because almost all weight class sports are like that. I'm heavy into Olympic weightlifting, and it's the same.
It's the same thing.
Yeah,
and you know, yes, it's the same concept, 100%. Yeah.
So that's interesting. Great. Yeah, we've been doing this for quite a while now. So
I'll keep going. I know.
It's really super interesting, especially when you have those many types of dogs, from the pit bull, the Chihuahua, the Boer Boels, even some bulldogs,
bull terriers, all that stuff.
Yeah.
We had bull terriers. That was a fun breed.
Yeah,
that was a really, really fun breed.
We have a couple of them over here. They are really, highs and lows. When the mood is right, they are awesome. and then they just don't give a fuck other days.
Yeah. That's the easiest way to explain it.
Yeah.
And what I noticed with them, it was harder to condition them down. They're so dense.
Oh, yeah.
At least the ones that we had. We had dogs that were like Czechoslovakian lines. And they were small, but they were dense. Yeah. So it was really hard to get the weight off of them because they were just so compact and they were so muscly dense dogs. But they were a different dog, man. They were just, like you said, sometimes they just didn't give a flying fuck about anything. It was a fun breed, though. It was a fun breed to work with. I love a nice little miniature bull terrier. They're fun. They're fun for sure.
I really like them as well.
Yeah.
But and you work them the same way.
I worked them the same. Yep. I did the same thing. I did a lot of swimming with them. I did a lot of swimming with them as well. But those guys were like, I used to say they were like pit bulls on meth.
That sounds about right.
And what's crazy, because they're so hard to read sometimes, because their facial expressions are all the same. That they're all like this, and they're happy, they're like this. They're sad, they're like this. They're excited. It's the same thing every single time, and you're trying to read the dog at what it is, and they just have this look, and it's always the same look all the time.
Yeah.
No, that was a challenge in itself.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think over here, at least, we have only had miniature bull terriers that done weight pulling, at least to my knowledge. So, and we have a couple of miniature pinchers now. Like
I
10 of them.
I did that too. We had one. I did that too with one. Yep.
So the record, the percentages record over here, it's a miniature pincher.
Really? That's awesome.
163, something like that.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
So she's an amazing dog. She started like 22 after the COVID and everything, and like we have a point system from 2008, and she's top 5 already of all time after like 3 or 4 years. Because she's such a great puller. It's an amazing little dog.
Wow.
Norwegian.
I think I believe the Chihuahua did like 220% of his body weight. He was 7 pounds and did like 1,500 and something, and it was at APA Nationals. He did that. So
that's crazy.
But it's pretty cool, like, to do little dogs like that. Not a whole lot of weight on the track, but when you do percentage numbers, you're like, whoa, that's through the roof.
Exactly.
That's good for them with that little min pin. That's pretty cool.
It's been the smallest class is minus like 12 pounds over here, and they have 4 or 5 really good dogs, and now it's a Griffon, something like that. It's the
Griffon.
The Griffon with a flat face. And his first season now, and is winning a lot. So
I think I've seen that little dog. I think I've seen it. It's like a buckskin color, right? It's like a brown, like a light brown, black mask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's yeah. It's so fun with other breeds than the typical bully breeds. Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think we're gonna end it here. But
Sure.
As I said to the other guys, is there anything that you want to the Scandinavian listeners to get from you that you haven't told us already?
I think the most important thing with this sport is just take your time. Take your time. Understand that this is more mental than it is physical. When you put the two aspects together, then you know then your training is there, and then you're gonna do great things with your dog. But you gotta baby the mental. Take your time. Take your time. Take your time. And again, take your time some more, you know, especially, you know, I can't emphasize enough on that, because you rush, you tend to cut corners, and then you cut corners, and then, you know, it sets you back. It sets you back. You know, the best thing to do is just take your time, and you'll have a lot of success. If you focus on the mental aspect of it, the physical comes right with it. The physical is like secondary to the mental. And I think that's the best advice I can give anybody from anywhere, is just take your time, focus on the mental aspect of it. Never put yourself or the dog in a situation where he thinks the weight's never going to move. You know, always figure out when to say enough's enough in your training and in an event. You know, when you see some of these dogs that are hanging out there for long times, you know, a lot of the times when you see good trainers doing that, they've worked their dogs up to that. That they've worked their dogs up to that. Don't do something like that right from the beginning, you know, because it's gonna set you back. So
yeah, that's really, really good advice. I've been saying for years, it's easy to get a strong dog. It's hard to get a weight pull dog. So,
absolutely. I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much. It's been a pleasure. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.